In today's video, we're going to talk about renting versus buying a home, and if renting is really a waste of money. I'm going to share why I've personally have been renting for the last 4 years and why I've now decided to go ahead and purchase a home that I'm going to be moving into. Now, renting is paying for a home, paying for shelter. There's absolutely nothing morally or financially wrong with smashing that like button below. It really helps YouTube share this video to more renters who may think that renting is a waste of money. On the other hand, buying a home is essentially renting money. You're paying interest to a bank in exchange for the money that you can go ahead and purchase a home with. In the short term, there are many cases where renting a home may be the better option to choose. However, in the long run, in most cases, it does pay off to own a home. Now, let's start with considering why you may want to rent a home instead of purchase a home. The first reason is location uncertainty. If you're not sure where you're gonna live in the next 3 to 5 years, it may really make sense to rent a home versus buying a home because the transaction costs with owning and selling real estate are quite high. So if you're not gonna live there for a long enough period of time to build equity, the costs of transacting the real estate may eat up any of your potential gains from owning the property. The second reason is unaffordability. If you live in a city that is very expensive, I'm talking Toronto, New York, Vancouver, Los Angeles, right? There are many cities where the cost of buying a property is really high. It may just not be an option for you to own your own home in those cities, and renting may be the only option where you can afford to live in that city. The third reason is similar to the second, but it's slightly different. It is the opportunity cost of owning your own home. So in many cases, when you're running a business or you're building a business, you may need every dollar you have to put back into it to grow it. Or if there is, some opportunity you want to pursue because you think it has a very strong possibility of succeeding and creating some potential upside for you, it may make sense to focus on that instead of buying a home and rent instead. A common example of this that I'm actually helping quite a few people with is to rent a home in a city like Toronto where it's quite expensive and instead take the money that they would have used for a down payment on their personal home and purchase 2 or even 3 rental properties in the Niagara region. And finally, it's if you're not able to get a mortgage at the best rate. So what I mean by this is if you have bad credit and you can only get a B lender or a private lender, so you end up paying quite a high interest rate in order to get a mortgage, or maybe like in my case, when I moved to the city of St. Catharines, I actually just started my career as a real estate agent. So I became self-employed, and whenever you become self-employed for the first 2 years, until you have a proven track record of a positive income in the first 2 years, no bank is going to offer you a very good interest rate on a mortgage or even offer you a mortgage at all. So because of that, if you can't get a mortgage at decent terms, it may make sense to rent while you get your credit repaired or get yourself financially in a position where you can qualify for a good mortgage so that you can purchase a home later on with better terms. Now, I mentioned that renting may be a bad idea in the long run. So here are a few reasons why. Over time, especially in areas that are in demand where the population is growing, like in the Greater Toronto area and sort of the Greater Golden Horseshoe area, so Southern Ontario, since the population is growing, since the economy is doing well, things are moving forward as they have been in the last few years prior to COVID, the rental rate tend to increase over time. And in some cases, these can be quite dramatic, right? I know some friends who live in Toronto where they were renting, for example, for $1,200 or $1,400. And by the time they left the property to buy a place of their own, the rents in those same apartments or townhouses or condos had more than doubled or even tripled, right? So in some cases, long-term renting may be very costly, especially if you're renting from a single landlord and not an institutional landlord. What I mean by that is with a single landlord where it's an investor who owns a property, they may choose to move into the property. They may choose to sell the property and the new buyer may choose to move in. In these cases, you're not assured that you can live in that property for the long term. So if you have to rent for the long term and are moving from place to place to place, every time you move, you essentially get hit with the new market rate, and that can be a steep increase each time. And over the long term, your monthly cost may really go up. The second point is more of a pet peeve and a preference.
you have no control when you rent a home. And what I mean by this is, if there's something that needs to get fixed, if the property needs to be repaired or improved or something needs to be done, even though as a renter the benefit is you don't have to pay for it, the downside to that is that you're kind of depending on the landlord to do a good job. And if you have a good landlord, great, right? They're going to come take care of the issues right away and make sure that you have a comfortable place to live. But the risk is, if you are renting a place, especially if you are under market rent, your landlord may not be so motivated to improve the place, to fix the place, to keep it up to a good shape. So your living conditions may not be the ideal scenario. And when you own a home, you have a lot more control. You can, if something breaks, even though you have to pay for it, you get to just call the plumber to get it fixed, and you get to have full control over that process. So the third reason why renting in the long term may not be the best idea is that there's very little opportunity for you to create additional income from the property. When you own a home, you can, have a basement apartment that you rent out separately. You can rent out some rooms on Airbnb. There are options for you to create some income from the property to help offset some of the costs. So house hacking is one of the popular ways that people, buy a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex. They live in one unit, they rent out the other units and have that income offset some of their costs, right? That option is not available to you as a renter. So if you rent a place, you have a fixed monthly cost, and there's not that much opportunity for you to create income from your home to pay for the expenses of the home. So let's now go into why you may consider buying a home. The first benefit of buying a home is you get the mortgage pay down. So every month when you make your mortgage payment, a portion of it goes to interest, but because interest rates are so low right now, I'm seeing anywhere from 50 to 70% actually going to paying down the principal of the mortgage. So the actual loan amount is reducing by close to 50 to 70% of your mortgage payment each month. And over time, if you live in an area where the population is growing, where the economy is growing, where people desire to move into that place, you're going to see appreciation and price increases. Real estate over the long run has appreciated at about 3% a year if you consider all of the major cities in North America over the last 100 years. And recently in the greater Golden Horseshoe area in Southern Ontario, we're seeing, rapid price increases. But even if you look back for the last 25 years, on average, it's somewhere between 4 to 6% where prices have been increasing consistently year over year. You may have some moments where the prices come down, sort of blips in the radar. But for the last 25 years, we haven't really seen a real estate correction of any kind. And over that period of time, prices have really consistently increased. So the third reason why you may consider buying a home is the third reason why you may not want to consider renting a home, which is that opportunity to create income. So having a property with a basement apartment, a garden suite, rooms that you rent out on Airbnb are all great ways where you can create income to help you offset the cost of owning your property. And the other aspect is, over time, as you pay down your mortgage, as the property appreciates in value and you build equity in the property, you can then go back to the bank and tap into that equity, borrow it out at very low interest rates, and you can invest it into other opportunities that may have a better potential to create wealth. So whether that's purchasing investment real estate, whether it's starting a business, whether it's putting it into index funds, there's opportunities that you have to use the equity you build in the home to further generate wealth for you. So that's why over the long run, owning a home may be very beneficial to building your long-term wealth. Now, the fourth reason you may want to consider buying a home is pride of ownership. When you own a home, you get to improve it and you get to create a space that you really feel comfortable living in. You can do the same when you rent a home, but not quite to the same extent, right? When you rent a home, there's really a tendency for you to not want to even paint the home or put any money to keep up the quality of the space just because you don't own it. So you don't really want to put money into this place that you're renting, versus when you buy a place, this is your home. You own it, you're building equity in it, so you want to keep it up to a good condition. And as a result, you get to enjoy living in a home that's taken care of. So that's a huge benefit, I think, just from a peace of mind and from a quality of life perspective. Now, let's get into why I've decided to rent a home for the past 4 years.
Now, I bought a condo in 2016 in the city of Mississauga with my brother. That's, just outside of Toronto. And we lived there for about a year. Since then, I decided to move to the city of St. Catharines in the Niagara region, And for the past 4 years, I've been renting 2 places. I started by renting a home for about $1,000 a month in the downtown core, which is not the best area, but I was young, I didn't care, I was single then. And then since getting married, I've moved into an apartment paying about $1,200 a month. Now, as of right now, I have a home under contract that me and my wife are purchasing that we're going to be moving into in the next month or so. And this property is a semi-detached home with a basement apartment, and we purchased it for $480,000. Now, I decided to purchase this home because we just had our first kid. We're really looking to settle down for the next little bit. We want to live in a little bit of a nicer place, so we're going to upgrade our home. It's going to be a little bit nicer than what we're living in now. I've actually purchased this from a seller that is flipping the home. So they're going to be renovating the home and I'm going to be moving into it once it's all done. So it's sort of turnkey for me, which is kind of what I wanted. I'm not necessarily a fan of renovating homes. I've done it for the investment properties that I own, but whenever possible, if someone else is willing to do the work and I can just pay for a home and get a turnkey home, I'm personally a big fan of that. So that's what we've decided to opt for in this case. Maybe on the next home we purchase, a couple of years later, we may purchase a fixer-upper and really make it to fit what we want. But right now, this was the perfect fit for us. Now, in future videos, I'll talk about why I've decided to buy a home with a basement apartment. But when it comes to owning a home, if you can have a supplemental income of some kind, if you have a bedroom that you rent out on Airbnb, if you rent out a basement apartment, that additional income can really offset all of your costs when it comes to owning a home. Because when it comes to owning a home, there's part of your costs that is equity you get to keep, right? When you pay down the mortgage, that's money that you're not necessarily losing. You get to keep that, you're building your wealth in the property you own. However, there are fixed costs like your interest, your property taxes, your insurance, your utilities, right? So those fixed costs, if you can have some income coming in from the property, it can go a long way to offsetting those costs so that you're not really out of pocket that much as you own this home and you're building equity along the way. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below, do you rent or do you own? And if so, why? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, all the best.